Okay, so good day sa ating lahat and I will be discussing to you the translocation process in our plants, especially in the physiological processes of the plants. So last time we discussed about the translocation. So if we say translocation, this is the movement of the organic compounds. So what are these organic compounds that translocate in the plants? Example of the organic compounds that are translocated in our plants are the sugars and the amino acids. And we all know amino acid is the building block of the protein from the source to the sink. So the translocation process are nangyayari or it will occur from the source up to the sink. So from the source up to the sink. So we considered that the roots are the sink or the last translocation process, and the first translocation process in the photosynthetic activity is the leaves. While if there is an absorption of water or involvement of water, so the roots involving the uh, the sources and the sink will be the leaves. So nangyayari ito during what or nangyayari ito sa anong parte ng plants natin. So we will discuss that specifically. Okay? So we have the xylem and the phloem. So what do we mean by the xylem and phloem? So but before of that, uh the xylem and the phloem, this is the part of the plants wherein sila mismo or diyan mismo nagaganap yung conversion of the nutrients. So the organic molecule or organic compounds like the sugar and amino acid can move, 'di ba? Can move from the sources to the sink via a phloem tube. So the phloem tube is responsible in translocating the food of our plants, especially the phloem carries the food downward. Okay, it carries the food downward coming from the sources. Okay, so from the leaves to the roots. Okay, so the xylem is distributed the water and it dissolved the minerals upward. So it dissolved the minerals upward. So dito mismo nanggagaling yung sources of water natin from the roots to the leaves. So ang ginagawa ni xylem para matunaw or kaya magkaroon ng conversion itong si phloem in the organic compounds, the xylem will release water through the phloem. From into the phloem, I should say. Okay, it releases water into the phloem. And then the other compounds of the phloem will give or kaya will distributed also in the xylem. So nagtutulungan yung dalawang ito. So the phloem is composed of the living tissues called the sieve tube. So the living tissues that are present inside the phloem is so-called the sieve tube. So the sieve tube is a lack of nucleus. So wala siyang nucleus, okay? That are joined end to end to form a tube that conduct food materials throughout the plants. And the phloem also is the bordered by the companion cells, okay, that carry out the cellular function of a sieve element or a sieve tube element. As you can see, the companion cell sa both ends of the phloem or in the nodes of the phloem. So para siyang nodes. So in the both nodes of the phloem, naka-attach doon yung tinatawag nating companion cells. So, phloem tube also carries the sugar and amino acid in the variety of directions, depending on where the source and the sink are located. Sometimes, roots can be the sources or the sink. It depends to the situation or locations of the roots. So the sources produces by the photosynthesis. Okay? Sources are produces mainly for photosynthetic activity in the leaves or a green stems or by hydrolysis of the starch in the storage vessels. And it deliver these products via phloem. So via phloem siya. So ang ginagawa, sinisieve tube or kaya ini-strain mismo yung pagkain coming from the sunlight or coming from the source. And then, as you can see, the molecule will be activated. So, once na naging activated sila, so that's the time na kung saan yung designated parts, kung saan sila magpo-provide ng food, doon na ilalagay or na ita-translocate yung pagkain na yan. Okay? So, yun. So as you can see, dalawa yung klase ng companion cell. The companion cell, this is the first companion cells. So it will support to the needs or to the molecule that are present in the phloem. So coming from the sources. So it will deliver or it will provide so that the molecule will completely convert as a food. And at the same time, after that, there is a part wherein it will sink. Okay, example of sink is the root cells. So it will be sink. So once na nagkaroon ng excess of food, the roots will accumulate or the roots will absorb. Okay? Will absorb. So lahat ng mga sobra na nandoon sa parte ng plants natin, so once na nakarating sila sa roots, so that's the time na yun yung pinaka-sink nila. Wherein lahat ng mga excess food converted in the plants will delivered into the roots. Kaya nakikita natin, napapansin natin, bakit kaya mas mahaba ang roots kesa yung plants, especially sa mga trees natin. So, alam nyo ba na ang trees natin ay mas mahaba kaysa sa roots? Kasi ang last end ng production ng pagkain coming from the source, yun yung sa leaves of the photosynthetic will be in the roots. So the roots will expand due to high nutrient. Okay? So mag-e-expand yan. Kaya makikita natin, mas mahaba ang roots kesa sa puno. Kahit pagdugtong-dugtungin mo pa yung kanyang leaves, roots is the longest height in terms doon sa puno natin or doon sa ating upper part. Okay? So in the sources produces a sugar by photosynthesis. So the sources produces a sugar by the photosynthesis in leaves or a green stem or by the hydrolysis. So hydrolysis is the reaction of water wherein from the higher to the lower part. Okay? So, yun. And it delivered this product via the phloem to the sink at the sources. Sugar and the other organic molecule are loaded in the sieve tube. So it loaded to the sieve tube, thus increasing the solute concentration within the sieve tube cells. Okay? So how important is the water in the xylem and phloem? Gaano ka-importante ang tubig sa xylem and phloem natin? So napaka-importante ng tubig natin because water from the surrounding tissues enter the sieve tube member by osmosis process following a concentration gradient. So the water absorbed in the sieve tube is create hydrostatic or hydrostatic pressures that forces the phloem sap to flow towards the sink. Okay? So napaka-importante ang tubig kasi ang tubig natin they are transparent wherein anything can dissolve through water. So through the process of the osmosis, if we say osmosis, this is the movement of the water or the force of movement of water into the inside the plants. Okay? So yung forces niya kung gaano ka taas yung forces ng water, yun yung tinatawag nating osmosis. Okay? Another one is the pressure flow model. So in that pressure flow model, so the incompatibility of the water allow the transport along the hydrostatic pressure gradients. So at the normal temperature, kapag sa normal temperatura or in the pressure flow model, sa normal temperature nung ating environment, the compressibility of water is low. Okay? What do you mean by compressibility? If we say compressibility, compress. So compressibility is ability of the liquid. This is the ability of the liquid to reduce or decrease in volume or size under pressure. So compressibility means ability of the water or a liquid to reduce or decrease in volume or in the size. So sa normal temperature ng ating plants natin, the compressibility of water is low. So it means mababa ang compressibility. So ang tubig pag nandoon sa loob ng plants natin, especially on the part of the xylem, mataas ang kanyang ang tawag doon, incompressibility siya. If we say incompressibility, higher yung volume ng tubig. Okay? Hindi siya nako-compressed. Wherein, once na nakapasok na yung tubig, para siyang rumaragasa in Tagalog. So it means hindi mo mapipigilan yung pagtaas ng volume ng tubig. Kasi nga, once na ito ay galing sa baba and it will move upward, so it means pinupull up niya. Once na nagpo-pull up due to the normal temperature, so mataas yung compressibility niya. Okay? So the compressibility of water is so low that can be considered incompressible. So once they are low compressibility, they are called incompressibility. Okay? Once na high yung volume ng water or high yung pressure ng water, they are so called incompressible. So any change in pressure at one end of the transport vessels will result in an equal change in pressure at the other end of the transport vessel. So this allow the phloem sap to move up or down with or against gravity as it moves from the sources to the sink. Okay? So ganun ang tubig natin. Once na normal yung temperature, incompressible ang tubig sa loob ng plants. Okay? Kapag sinabi nating incompressible, mataas yung forces niya through the process of what we call on osmosis. Kapag sinabi nating osmosis, that is the total volume of water or yung movement of water inside the plants. Okay? Next. So we have also a definition of terms here. So if we say assimilate, they are called incorporations. So kapag sinabi nating assimilation, ito yung paghalo-halo ng mga organic compounds, mainly the sugar sucrose or in the product of the photosynthesis. That is the major component of the substance found in the phloem. So the translocation is a transport movement of the assimilate, transport of ions and molecules to the desired location that occurs in the xylem vessels. So if we say translocation, that is the movement or distribution of the nutrients inside the physiological parts of the plants, especially in the part of the phloem. Because in the part of the phloem, nandoon yung ating companion cells, wherein the companion cells will hold or guard the molecule inside the phloem para hindi siya matapon. Okay? If we say sources naman, this is the structure that produce or release sugar for the growing plants. So mostly ng sources natin are coming from the upper part of the plants, especially the leaves, wherein yung leaves natin nagkakaroon ng photosynthetic activity. While the sink, that is the point of sugar delivery, such as moss roots, young shoots, and developing fruits and seeds. So, ang pinaka-sink natin is the roots, the shoots, the fruits, and the seeds. Okay? So, ano naman ang ibig sabihin ng phloem loading and phloem unloading? So, kapag sinabi nating phloem loading, so para itong sa highway, na kapag sinabi nating loading, ito yung pagsalta or something na pagsakay. 'Di ba? Kapag unloading naman, ito yung pag-release or pagbaba. So, once na naisasama siya ng tubig or ng water, yung molecule na yon, ang tawag doon, phloem loading. Okay? Wherein, nangyayari ang phloem loading natin sa phloem. Okay? Or doon sa phloem part ng ating plants. And then kapag phloem unloading, ito yung release and delivered to their target tissues. So kapag bumaba na mismo yung molecule na yon, and it will transport on the specific or designated parts, that is so-called phloem unloading. Phloem unloading is nagpo-provide ka na ng nutrients o nagpo-provide na ng nutrients yung plants doon. Okay? Next. Phloem loading naman, this is the pick-upping of the molecule that are present in the phloem part, and it will translocated in the designated part. Okay? So in the phloem loading, meron tayong dalawang klase ng phloem loading. We have the passive loading and the active loading. Kapag sinabi kasi natin passive loading, the sugar move into the phloem passively, and it driven by a concentrate gradient. Okay? So, the sucrose is actively transported into the companion cells. So, yung sucrose natin are very active in the companion cells or as sieve elements, okay, of the phloem from the mesophyll cell where photosynthesis occur. So, at the concentration of the sucrose increases in the phloem cells, it creates an osmotic gradient. So kapag ang concentration ng sucrose ay tumaas doon sa phloem cells, nagke-create siya ng tinatawag nating osmotic gradient that draws water into the cells. And then kapag sinabi naman nating active loading involve the use of energy. So merong energy. Okay? To move the sugar or to move sugar against their concentration gradient. Yung isa naman kasi passively, wherein ay the mesophyll cell will actively transport into the companion cells. And then the active loading naman, merong energy. Okay? Ito yung pinaka-keyword natin for the active. So, dumaan siya sa tinatawag nating Z-scheme, wherein merong energy occurs. And then after the production of the energy and the product of that Z scheme, yan. So, doon maa-activate or magkakaroon ng active loading. Okay? So, paano yung dalawang mechanism ng ating ah phloem unloading? Paano nila binababa mismo yung pagkain sa loob ng plants? So, meron tayong dalawang klase ng phloem unloading. We have the symplastic unloading and apoplastic unloading. So if we say symplastic unloading, this is the transported substance move from the symplast. So yung mga substance or mga organic molecule will move through the symplasts, which include the interconnected living protoplast of the plant cells. So the sugar here in the symplastic pass through the plasmodesmata. So that is the channel that connect adjacent plant cells, eventually reaching the target cells where they are used or stored the apoplastic unloading. They are used or stored, I should say. So, kapag sinabi natin plasmodesmata, the channels that connect adjacent plant cell that eventually reaching the target cells where they are used or stored. And then the apoplastic unloading naman, this is the involvement of the movement of substance through the non-living space. Okay? Outside the plant cell known as the apoplast. So nangyayari ang loading sa symplast and sa apoplast part ng ating plants. So the transported material move through the cell wall and intercellular spaces is until they reach the target cells. Okay? So yun, dalawa ang mechanism ng phloem unloading sa symplastic and sa apoplastic part ng ating plants. Okay? So, next one. Okay? Another one is this figure. So, we have the phloem symplastic phloem loading and the partly apoplastic phloem loading. So, eto naman yung types of loading in the phloem. Eto kanina yung phloem unloading and then meron din tayong phloem loading. Dalawa din, symplast din siya, phloem loading and the partly apoplast phloem loading. So in some plants, sugar move from sugar-producing cells into companion cells and seed tube elements via plasmodesmata. So as you can see, dikit-dikit, ano? So the seed tube are connected with the companion cells and also the sources. So ito kasi yung tinatawag nating sources. The sources is connected with the companion cells and the companion cells will convert and talagang kino-convert siya into nutrients that provided to the plants. And after that, papasok siya mismo or it will transfer to the sieve tube. So the sieve tube are responsible in conversion of the organic molecule. Ito kasi malalaking molecule. Okay? And then dito naman ay fine molecules. Okay? Ito na yung mga fine molecules natin. So, ganyan ang nangyayari. So, this is the plasmodesmata wherein dyan mismo dadaan yung sugar-producing cells. Another one, kapag partly apoplastic naman, nakahiwalay ang sugar-producing cells. Wherein meron silang barrier na maiko-convert pa sa hydrogen or the ATPase ang mga molecule na na-produce or kaya ire-release mismo ng sugar-producing cells. After that, This part is so-called the apoplast. So, after na dumaan siya sa apoplast, that's the time na it will enter to the companion cells through hydrogen and the less ATPase. Okay? So, and then, diyan na mismo mangyayari yung mga conversions ng mga molecule until it will reach the sieve tube that are located in the phloem parts. Okay? So ano bang ibig sabihin ng sieve tube element? So kapag sinabi nating sieve tube element, stack of this cylindrical or column-like structure. So it is a column-like structure. So ang tawag mo dito is a sieve tube. Okay? This is a lateral sieve area and then this is the sieve tube plate. Okay? Kapag sieve tube element, yun yung buong part wherein para siyang merong nodes. Ano? Para siyang merong nodes and this is the internode or a compartment. So the compartment part of a sieve tube plate is so-called a sieve tube element. Okay? If you have any questions, guys, please raise na lang sa ating GC. Ano? So, naintindihan na natin yung iba't ibang definitions ng ating plans. And we will go on to the technical part of our discussions. And that is the pathway of the translocations. So in the pathway of translocations, so sugar and other organic material are conducted throughout the plants in the phloem. So nangyayari ang conversion or release of the sugar and other organic materials in the phloem. Okay? Xylem also provided only water, specifically in the cell called a sieve element. So ang sieve element natin, doon mismo nagagather lahat ng mga organic compound na nako-convert into a food that will be translocated in or that will be translocated in the specific part wherein kung saan sila designated. Okay? So, when the radioactive compound became available, so if we say radioactive compound, ito yung radiations na galing mismo doon sa photosynthetic activity or kaya ito yung sunlight or ito yung mismong light produces by the sunlight. So, radioactive yon. Okay? That are available. So, when they are available, so radio-labeled carbon dioxide was used to show that the sugar made in photosynthetic process are translocated through the phloem sieve tube. So maghahalo-halo pala yung mga radioactive compounds na galing sa sources and then the carbon dioxide that show the sugar made in the photosynthetic process that are translocated. So alam nyo ba na yung mga pinag-aralan natin na mga Kelvin cycles, sa cells lang nangyayari. So after sa cells, that's the time na yung plants kasi natin madaming cells. So sila yung magpo-produce ng mga main food wherein nandun sila mismo sa leaves. Okay? So yung leaves natin, kapag puno na ng pagkain yon na galing sa photosynthetic activity natin, that's the time na bababa na sila for the distributions. Kasi hindi lang naman doon sila mananatili, 'di ba? Kapag i-appreciate natin yung leaves, imaginin mo yung leaves, meron siyang cell. Doon sa loob ng cells, merong conversion ng pagkain doon. Once na na-convert yung mga pagkain na nandoon, hindi lang naman sila magi-stay doon. Okay? So, that's the time that the leaves will release. Yan. So, kasi ang leaves natin, sila yung nagiging sources, ay nagiging sink or sources. Di ba? So, yon. It depends to the situations. But mostly, ang sources natin or ang sink natin ay sources and sink natin kapag babalikan natin ito. Yan, tingnan natin. So ang sources natin mostly produces or release sugar for the growing plants. So ang example dito ng mga sources natin ay yung leaves. And then ang mga sink natin yun yung mga roots natin. So nangyayari ang pagkain or nagde-develop ng pagkain through the leaves. Okay? Through the leaves. So, kapag imaginein mo yung leaves natin, balik tayo sa leaves. Pag imaginein mo yung leaves natin, merong mga cells doon na kung saan nagko-convert ng pagkain. Yun yung present nyo last time. Di ba? So, nagko-convert sila ng mga pagkain. And at the same time, once na ready na yung pagkain na yun at luto na, that's the time it will transport in the sieve elements so that it will assimilate. And once na nagkaroon ng assimilations, that's the time na the phloem will responsible in loading and unloading of a finished product coming from the sources and the sink. Kasi yung sink natin, tubig. Di ba? So, yan. So, sieve elements display a variety of structural adaptation that makes them well suited for the transport. So, meron kasi siyang mga variety of structural adaptation that make them well suited for the transport. So, eto yung mismong parts ng plants natin. Ito kasi black and white. Yung pinapakita ko kanina sa PowerPoint presentation, that is the actual wherein colorful siya. So this is the ito kasi yung actual sa loob ng plants wherein gumamit sila ng mga microscopic compound or tool so that makikita mismo nila yung loob ng plants. So the letter A, this is the electron micrograph of the longitudinal section of the two mature sieve tube. Okay? Two mature sieve tube or sieve tube element. So showing the wall between the sieve elements called the sieve plate. Yan, asan yung sieve plate dito? So showing the wall between the sieve element. So this is the sieve element and this is the sieve plate in the hypocotyl of winter squash. So ito naman ay sa winter squash. So the inset shows sieve plate pores in face view. So this is 4,280 pixel. So in both image A and B, the sieve plate pores are open. So yung mga sieve tube natin ay open. Okay? Once na sumara kasi ito, it means fulfilled na mismo or satisfied na siya. Okay? So that is unobstruct by protein, function in sealing of damaged sieve elements by plugging up the sieve plate pores. So ito yung phloem part wherein this is the part of the sieve plate and this is the sieve tube. Ito mismo kung saan naroroon yung tubig. And this is the companion cells. So baliktad naman ito ano? So yung picture nito, nasa left ang companion cells. So depende sa location and this is the parenchyma cells and this is the obstruction sieve plate pores and parenchyma cells. So how is the pattern of the translocations? So paano yung pattern ng translocations natin? So the materials are translocated in the phloem from the sources. So kapag sinabi nating sources, that is the area of photosynthate supply. So karamihan ng sources natin galing mismo sa leaves. Kasi sila mismo yung nagpo-photosynthesize. Kung saan yung part ng plants natin na nagpo-photosynthesize, that is so-called as sources. Because in the sources, doon mismo nangyayari ang iba't ibang processes of conversion of organic molecules. Especially, depende kasi sa plants yan. 'Di ba? Kapag C3, C4 yung plants natin. and to the sink areas of metabolism or storage of photosynthate. So sources are usually matured leaves. So karamihan na mga sources natin are the matured leaves. Sila yung may kakayahan na mag-photosynthesize or completely yung development ng leaves, especially kapag nakita mo na yung kanyang color kapag sa rice, and fully develop yung mismong leaf structure that is considered as a sources. So sink include organs such as the roots and immature roots and leaves and the fruits. So as you can see, ang mga sink natin, mga immature leaves. Considered nila yung mga leaves na immature kasi nga magde-develop pa lang siya. So ang provider ng pagkain doon are the sources or the mature leaves, wherein sila yung may kakayahan or capability to produce or to photosynthesize. Okay? So in the sources to sink pathways, follow the anatomic and developmental patterns. So meron tayong mga pathways. Number one is the proximity. So if we say proximity, proximity of the sources to the sink is a significant factor. So the upper mature leaves on the plant usually provide photosynthase to the growing shoot tips and immature leaves. So the lower leaves supply predominantly the root system. So the lower leaves sa part ng plants natin, sila yung nagsusupply sa root system. Okay, sa baba. And then the intermediate leaves or kaya sa gitna, export in both direction. So bypassing the intervening mature leaves. So meron tayo kasing mga ang tawag doon, parts ng ating plants. Merong lower part ng leaves, the middle part ng leaves natin, and the upper part. So as you can see, yung mga lower leaves daw natin, ang sinusuplayan nila predominantly is the root system. While the intermediate or yung gitna ng leaves natin, both the directions by passing the intervening mature leaves. That is the proximity. Okay? Or saan ba nila nakukuha? Okay? So development. So marirealize natin na sa proximity, hindi lahat ng nasa upper leaves pinoprovide niya yung mga nasa roots. 'Di ba? Baka ang responsible ng upper leaves natin are the shoots, the fruits, and the flower. And in the lower part ng leaves natin, especially sa mga puno or kaya sa mga cereals natin, sa lower leaves, sila yung nagpo-provide sa roots. Okay? So development, the importance of various zinc may shift during plant development. So the importance of various zinc may shift during plant development. Whereas the roots and shoot apices or the apical are usually the major sink. Okay? During vegetative growth. So kapag vegetative growth or kaya young yung mga plants natin, ang pinaka-major sink natin is the roots and the shoots. And fruits generally become the dominant sink. Yan. During reproductive development. So nagiging dominant sink din kasi kapag namunga na mismo yung gulay natin or yung plants natin, ang concentration kasi ng nutrients ay doon mismo sa fruits. Okay? So, susuplayan nila yon ng nutrients. Kaya nagiging sink siya. The end product of the plants during reproductive was unloaded or will be unloaded in the fruits. Okay? Depende sa stage yan. Example sana, meron kang plants and then on the seedling stage, siyempre, ang concentration mo, kapag nag-provide ka ng nutrients, example sana naglagay ka ng nitrogen or kaya ng NPK, yan, ng nitrogen. So, and then, yung abono na yon, i-absorb yan ng roots. And at the same time, yung activation ng photosynthetic activity na galing sa sunlight ay magko-convert into food. And then, transport ito sa phloem, and si phloem ang responsible doon sa assimilations ng nutrients na galing mismo sa lupa. And then once na nagkaroon ng incorporation or assimilations, that's the time na kung ano yung purpose during that particular stage nung crop natin, especially kapag sa corn or rice, doon nila mismo tinatransport. Example sana, naglagay ka ng nitrogen. The nitrogen is composed of an element wherein it will enlarge the shoots, or it will grow a shoots, or it will promote growth. So kung ano yung responsibility ng nutrients na yon, sumusunod yung photosynthetic activity na nasa taas. Kasi nga, support yung nutrients. Hindi kasi kaya ng photosynthetic activity lang. Kailangan merong support nutrients, kaya kung ano yung kakulangan ng lupa, yun yung ipoprovide natin. Okay? So, nakadepende sa stage ng crop natin ang pagpo-provide natin ng nutrients. Okay? Nakadepende yung nutrients or nakadepende sa plants natin yung pagpo-provide natin ng nutrients, especially sa stage niya. Okay? Alangan naman na maglalagay ka pa ng nitrogen kung reproductive stage na yung plants mo. So anong gagawin ng ating phloem? So kung ano yung na-absorb niya na nutrients, yun yung tututukan niya pa rin. Leaves pa rin siya, shoots pa rin siya. So ang pinaka concentrations ng mga plants natin kapag nitrogen ay yung shoots. Siya yung pinaka-serve as the sink kasi hindi pala sila develop. Okay? So ganun yon. Nakadepende sa development. Example sana, yung nitrogen kasi natin, meron siyang composed of auxin. The auxin promotes growth wherein yung auxin na yon, ang pinaka-concentration niya lang is to targeting the shoots. Promotes growth. Kapag naman yung ating gibberellic acid, it enlarge and root development. So it enlarge the stem. So ang pinaka-concentration niya, mag-unloaded yung phloem doon sa stem. Okay? Depende sa kung ano yung right of timing kung kailan mo siya gagamitin. So yun, ganun ka-hectic itong ating source to sink, especially sa mga nutrients na nilalagay natin. And then we have also the vascular connection. So sources leaves preferentially supply sink with which they have direct vascular connection. In the shoot system, for example, a given leaf is generally connected via vascular system to the other leaves, directly above or below it on the stem. So such vertical row of the leaves is called orthostichi. Okay, so the number of internodes between the leaves on the same orthostichi varies with the species. Okay. Another one is the modification of translocation pathway. So this is the interference with the translocations pathway by the wounding or pruning can alter the patterns that established by proximity and the vascular connections. So in the absence of the direct connection between the source and sink, vascular interconnection called anastosomes or a singular anastomosis that can be provide an alternative pathway. So in sugar beet, for example, removing sources leaves from one side of the plant can bring about cross-transfer photosynthase to the young leaves and on the pruned side. So removal of the lower sources of leaves of the plants can be forced the upper source leaves to translocate the materials to the roots, and it will be the removal of the upper sources leaves can force the lower source leaves to translocate the material to the upper parts of the leaves. Okay? So kung alam mo na daw, so the removal of lower sources of leaves of the plant can forces the upper source leaves to translocate material to the roots. So the removal of the upper source leaves can force lower, okay, to translocate the material in the upper parts of the leaves. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the longitudinal view of the typical three-dimensional structure of the phloem in the thick section from the internode of the dahlia. So as a view here, after clearing the staining with the aniline blue and observing under the epifluorescent microscope, the sieve plates are seen as numerous small dots. Okay? Because of the yellow staining of the coals in the sieve areas. So the large longitudinal vascular bundle are prominent. So this staining reveals the delicate sieve tube forming the phloem network. So the two phloem anastomoses are marked by arrows. And the letter B, that is distribution of radioactivity from the single labeled source of leaf in the intact plants. And the distribution of the radioactive in the leaves of the sugar beet plant was determined 1 week after the carbon dioxide was supplied for the 4 hours to a single source's leaf arrow. So ito ay isang study wherein inobserve nila yung mismong carbon dioxide and the sources and the zinc leaves wherein yung iba dito was removed. Okay, nagfo-fall down sila. Okay, yung mga lower part ng leaves natin nagfo-fall down. So, except all the sources leaves on the side of the plants opposite the labeled leaf were removed 24 hours before labeling. So, the zinc leaves on the both sides of the plant now receive the C-labeled assimilations from the sources. According yan kay Thais and Ziegler noong 2002. Okay? So, that is the end of our lecture regarding the sources to the zinc pathway following the anatomic and developmental patterns.